Okay, I have absolutely no plan for this video. I'm just lucky that my camera was charged. I literally came home, sat down, and turned on the camera. I really have something to say today. Hello, my name is Katie and welcome to my extended fiber universe. Today I want to talk about a video that I just watched. This is entirely unscripted. I just kind of want to get my thoughts out of the brain and somewhere else. And I'm a little fired up about this because I just have to ask, why are we so uncritical? Let me tell you what I mean. So I came across a video that was talking about the effect that the recent tariffs are going to have on the knitting community. The fact that the tariffs are going to touch everything in terms of price and cost, even in knitting, and especially in knitting, actually, I should say, because so many of the things that we use in knitting, from the tools to the fibers, come from a global market. And this video is coming specifically from an apolitical stance. It did not want to talk about the politics of the tariffs. But the thing is, the tariffs exist because of politics. So how can we not talk about the politics that have created these tariffs? If we are concerned about how the tariffs are going to impact something like a hobby, should we not then also talk about the politics that caused the tariffs, that are going to cause the increase in prices for our hobbies? Now, I want to say before I get any further into this that all of this is coming from an American perspective. So take that into account as I discuss the following. I've been sitting on a video script that I wrote about how fashion is political. Again, if you don't know, if you're new here, I have a degree in something called fashion studies, and I wanted to kind of discuss the different ways in which fashion is political. And the thing is, fashion is political in a variety of ways, but when we talk about things like fashion being political, or books being political, or reading being political, as was a topic on Book Talk, one of the things that we don't do is define the word political. So I wanted to define the word political here as an explanation for why it's important to talk about things like politics if we're going to discuss the consequences of those politics, which is what the tariffs are. I'm just going to kind of read what I have here. I think the assumption is that we all kind of just know or assume what the word political or politics means. I suppose you could say it's fairly straightforward, right? It means anything relating to politics and policy. Well, I wasn't very satisfied with that, so I decided to look it up, which is why I wrote this script and why I'm sitting here talking to you about this. According to a definition from Oxford Languages, the word political can be defined as, quote, relating to the government or the public affairs of a country. Additionally, Merriam-Webster states that it is, quote, of, relating to, or concerned with the making of governmental policy. Okay, so in this basic definition, we can see that it means concerning politics. But that's still not a very satisfying answer, so I dug a little bit deeper. Harold Lasswell, who is a political scientist and professor of law at Yale University, stated that the term political means, quote, who gets what, when, and how. And David Easton, professor of political science at the University of Chicago, describes it as, quote, the authoritative allocation of values for society, which in my opinion includes not just tangible resources such as food and housing, but also intangible resources such as rights and power. So I appreciate these definitions because I think that they describe what it is that we are actually discussing when we're talking about politics and when we're talking about something being political. The making of policy and the allocation of resources, which includes power. This power is then used to create policy that then reinforces the prescription of that power, which, as we've seen in our own societies, is exploited in order to create a power imbalance between a government and its people. Especially right now in the United States, as we're facing down a constitutional crisis, especially right now as we have an authoritarian government that is quickly descending into the F word. So the thing is, a policy which enacts tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, whatever kind of tariffs, that has this kind of economic impact, regardless of what niche you find yourself in, is a result of a group of people who have power. And they have the power to make a real, tangible, material impact on your lives. And it's not just going to be in knitting, it's going to be in everything and everywhere. But if we're going to talk about the thing that is impacting our hobby, which is honestly a privilege to have because not everybody has the time, money, resources, ability to have something like a hobby, then we need to talk about where it's coming from. Our ability to do our hobbies is impacted by politics. And we cannot divorce those things. And so we have to talk about them. Sure, I can agree that having a calmly delivered video in which we talk about, well, what are the actual material consequences going to be of something like the tariffs? That's a good thing to have. That's, you know, an attempt to educate people. But I think we still, why do we stop there? Why are we uncritical about this? Why do we not take it a step further and ask ourselves, why are these tariffs here? What are they trying to do? Who are the people who are enacting them? And who are they going to impact? Because let me tell you, the people that it's going to impact are not the people who are in power. It's going to be the people like you and me who like to knit as a hobby. Somewhere along the line, if this trade war doesn't resolve itself, or if I can't even say resolve itself, if the big orange in the White House doesn't finish throwing his temper tantrum, we're not going to have access to those materials. And I also don't think it's fair to say that a tariff like this is going to like stimulate our local yarn stores, or it's going to stimulate an investment in focusing on American wool growers and like building that relationship. That relationship already exists. The local yarn stores are going to suffer because they do stock imported goods. Our plethora of choices in America is going to suffer because of tariffs. Granted, I'm not one for overconsumption. I think Americans do overconsume, but it echoes the same argument of the tariffs themselves. One of the ideas of the tariffs is to stimulate like American manufacturing, but we don't have the infrastructure for manufacturing. Tariffs only really work in that manner if we spend years, if not decades, building up that manufacturing, so we have the ability to produce the consumer goods that we get from other places, and then enact a tariff so that way consumers are incentivized to purchase the American-made products because they're going to be cheaper than the imported products. But we don't have that infrastructure. I really think that the only thing it's going to do is raise the cost of living for everybody, which is going to make it harder to support our local yarn stores, which is going to make it harder for the farmers who also grow wool. It's just going to make life difficult for everybody. And that's because the tariffs are political in the sense of it is one person attempting to decide who gets what, when, and how we get it. So we can't talk about one without the other. And for all the people who are going to come into these comments and say that knitting isn't political, or I go to knitting to get out of my politics, I hate to break it to you, but everything in our world is unfortunately impacted by politics. It is impacted by who gets to decide what we get, when we get it, how we get it, and who has the authority to allocate our values for society. That's the thing. Society is the lives that we live, and if the values for society are allocated by an authoritative voice, that impacts literally every part of your social life. And humans are social creatures, after all. So we must discuss politics when we're talking about something that came from it. Now, am I saying that you can never have fun? That is absolutely not the case. But if you're thinking, hey, I don't want to think about politics in my knitting, well, when something like this happens, it's going to force you to think about it, because now you do have to think about who, where, what, when, and why am I going to be able to make these purchases for these things. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? They are inextricably linked, and so attempting to remain apolitical about it falls flat. It doesn't do us a service, I think. I generally don't understand that when it seems to come to hobbies, people are so willing to hear no evil and see no evil. I genuinely love knitting because it has done so much for me, because it has connected me with other people, because it has provided me both a creative outlet and expression and a social life. And my ability to do those things is impacted by our political lives. I mean, let's think about creative expression for a second. How many painters, artists, paintings, the actual material result of art has been destroyed because it questioned ideas or because it made people uncomfortable. These things don't exist in a vacuum. We might feel like it here in America when we spend most of our time working, and in our free time we spend most of it in private spaces like our homes, where we think that our actions don't impact the other people around us, but they do. They so do. They really, really do. So we need to talk about it. I mean, humans are the only animal in the world who is capable of this kind of spoken communication. It is a powerful tool for us to use to communicate with each other, to connect, to build our societies, to educate one another, to express ourselves. And talking about politics is a powerful tool. And being able to talk about politics is in and of itself also political. And talking about books, in this script I wrote, books have long been used not only as a way of disseminating a resource, which is knowledge, but have also been used to comment on what we as a society value in our political lives. It is how we communicate ideas and knowledge that can shift our thinking and therefore our values, which can then lead to taking action which holds our government responsible for the allocation of resources. This is how books can be and are political. But this video isn't about books, so where does fashion and knitting fit into all of this? Well, the thing is, saying things out loud, whether that's in books or through your clothes, or through your knitting, or your ability to knit, is a political action as it concerns the public affairs of our country. Furthermore, your right to free speech is a politically protected right here in the United States, and using your clothing to communicate your ideals is exercising that free speech right. Using your voice to speak up about the things that are going to cause you harm as a citizen in a country in which your government is supposed to protect you is a political action, and it's meant to be politically protected. I go on in this video to discuss the way that like wearing our clothes can communicate something, and I picked some like really obvious examples of moments of like political communication through clothing, but I also just wanted to bring up like other things about manufacturing that is managed by legislative regulatory policies, things like manufacturing standards and safety guidelines. I don't know if you guys know this, but the clothes that people make to sell to you, they have to follow certain safety guidelines in terms of things like material content, because throughout history we've used toxic materials. We've used toxic materials to this day with lead found in Shein, for example. But there's also safety guidelines for the amount of things that can be present in your yarn as well, like the kinds of dyes that they use, the kinds of chemicals that are present, the way that it's washed, environmental protection guidelines for the materials that are grown. There's also labor protections for the people who are running the mills and the factories that help turn the fiber into yarn. There's copyright and trademark laws that we have to deal with. There's also economic relationships between countries who buy materials and manufactured goods from one another. There's also laws that regulate what kind of consumer information is required when you sell a product. Like, there is so much about our world that is like mandated by these laws, which again is like the allocation of values for a society, that it, like, from the books on the shelves behind me to the yarn that I'm going to knit later tonight, it touches all of that, even if we don't see it, and even if it doesn't feel like it when we're alone at home in our living rooms knitting our projects. And it is so important that we remember that, and it's so important that we do not divide the two, because thinking uncritically is what people want from us. It's the reason why people try to ban books. It's the reason why they're attacking universities. The critical thought and being able to aim that critical thought at the people who are doing things that are maybe not good for us, that's considered, like, they find that dangerous. It's because it means that they can't control the way that we think. It threatens their power. And I think it's important to do that because I think we also forget that our representatives, our government, they're our employees. Our taxes pay their wages, and they are meant to represent us. So they should be a little bit afraid of us because they're supposed to be doing what we want. They're supposed to be providing things that we need in order to have a functioning society. And if what we need in order to have a functioning society is yarn, well, god dang, they best be helping us provide yarn. So I'm gonna stop there though, because I feel like if I continue talking, I'm going to start talking in circles. I have no idea how this video is going to be received, so take everything with a grain of salt, take a deep breath before you leave a comment, and yeah, I'll be back next time with a regular knitting podcast. I guess subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna go cook dinner and do my knitting.